So the answer on the relative humidity side to number 1 is 371. Number 2 is 4, which is 60%. Number 3 is 3. Number 4 is 2. Number 5, 69%. And 6 is dew point. Are there any there that you did not get the right answers to? Got them all right? Yeah? Even how'd we do when they gave you the relative humidity, but then, wait, was that any of these? No, it wasn't any of these, I don't think. So nobody needs anything gone over on that relative humidity side. How about on the dew point side? We got number 1 is 1. Number 2 is 4. Number 3, we got 3, which is 8. Number 4 is 3. Number 5 is 3. And number 6, I got 14 degrees Celsius. Yeah? Did I screw one up? Number 4. This 4 on dew point? You were on the wrong side. I was gonna say that one I'm sure of. That one didn't require math or anything. Did anybody else think I did any wrong? Because to be honest, I did not double check my work against the real answer keys. Okay, are there any we should go over? All right, so this is the stuff we're doing in lab. If you haven't already started lab, I believe you're starting it today. So that hopefully that helps you out with the relative humidity and dew point stuff. If you do need help, make sure you ask for it because I don't know if you don't ask. So again, anybody need help on any of these? You're done. Okay. All right, let's go then in our packet. Looks like I think we're 1 page further than we were yesterday, which we're gonna be on page 38. Before we get started today, I would like you guys to take a look outside and try to determine if you think we have a high pressure system or a low pressure system outside right now, and make sure you're able to defend your answer of why you think it is what it is out there. I am looking up the exact pressure right now. Of course, it's not going to tell me. Oh, no, it's not logging in. All right, well, what do you guys think? High pressure or low pressure, and why? You think it's low? Why?
Still cold outside.
Okay, so remember temperature. So even if it was cold, remember when things are more dense, what does the air do? Huh? It goes down. When things are more dense, it would go down. So cold is not the deciding factor in whether it's a high pressure or a low pressure. In fact, when talking about pressure, temperature is probably the least helpful for deciding if it is a high or low pressure. And I'll tell you why once we get to why it is what it is outside. TJ, what are you thinking? High pressure. First of all, I see you looked in your packet. What page are you looking at?
30.
Page 31, which I believe is at the compare and contrast we did. So page 31 here, which tells you a little bit about high and low pressure. It will tell you what it is out there right now. So can somebody tell me why TJ thought it was a high pressure system? It's clear, at least it's clear-ish. It is, that's why I wanted to double check, but of course the app is not working. It is kind of cloudy out there. So I have a feeling we're in between a high and low pressure. We're probably just at, what do you got? You see clouds?
I see a lot more clouds.
Yeah, it all depends on where you're sitting, because right in this section right here, it's pretty clear. And even the clouds that you're seeing, they're not as cloudy as it was like yesterday, where the sky was like a big fluffy blanket was covering us yesterday. So today I would say it is a high pressure. First of all, it's dry out there. It is not snowing. It's not foggy at the moment, but did anybody see some fog this morning? I saw some fog on Route 16 this morning coming in. So now that it's getting a little brighter out, the pressure is rising right now. Today was not the best example for looking out there, but this again, remember, high, dry, cool, and clear is what you're looking for a high pressure. A low pressure is going to be wet, warm, and cloudy. So now that we got that, let's turn to page 38, which we're going to start talking about air masses. But I think we might as well take a moment to watch the weather report for today. Hopefully this goes better than the last time I tried weather report for your class. Yeah, just a second. Let me keep going with what I'm doing here. Where is the volume? Oh, it's probably muted down here. Yep.
Winter for one day, and we'll celebrate it here on Leap Day, and then everything.
It's the
A lot
same
of this is likely
one.
to start melting.
How
There's a
is
shout out to
this?
Niagara Falls,
It
where
doesn't
again
make
the
any
combination
sense.
of the
It works for all
snow.
my other
And
classes.
of course, even just the midst of the fall.
This doesn't make any sense. All right, let's see here. All my other classes work just fine.
So we've had some nice breaks in the cloud cover. Tomorrow, that's the key thing, is it will work.
Stop talking. It says today's forecast. Why would it show updated March 20th? Is that it down there? No. It works for all my other classes except for your class. Okay, wait.
No way, and that's gonna be done. Hey, Ally, it's got.
Let's see if this is today's.
Hey, no way, and that's gonna be done again after.
Okay, it does say 320. That's today's date. That's encouraging. What? Oh yeah, Mike Syka's definitely a little strange. Has his moments at least. He's been on Channel 4 since I was
Niagara County. I'd say within this next hour here or so, and maybe toward the tail end of the morning commute into Buffalo. But right now, at least we're okay out there, at least as we start to head toward the tail end of the commute. And let's hope it stays that way. But we're going to be dealing with changeable conditions as we work through the day. In fact, there's a second band of that heading our way, especially early this afternoon. And these are the computer estimates for snow tallies today. But I got to tell you, if you take into account some steadier snow pockets maybe that may accompany some of this activity across the region today, you could end up with 1 to 3 inches maybe in spots across the metro. The greatest accumulation actually is going to be taking place today, tonight, and tomorrow in areas to the south and northeast of the city, where some additional bands of lake effect snow will impact those areas, at least during the overnight period, and for that matter, even tomorrow morning. But that should diminish as we get into the afternoon. Here's the out the door forecast, and I think we're going to peak probably in the mid-30s along about midday, and then readings drop this afternoon behind a cold front. So colder air is going to be pouring in here. This heavier snow is situated at 11 a.m. just to the southeast of Buffalo, may be a bit beyond that already by that point, but here comes that second band early this afternoon. If the timing on all of this works out, the evening commute may not be too bad, but there's still going to be some slippery conditions out there as we get you into the overnight. We have some bands of some snow dropping down from the northwest, and also that's going to be impacting areas mainly south and northeast of Buffalo. Will become partly cloudy here in the city during the overnight, and then partly sunny skies during the day. Tomorrow, the snow showers south and northeast of Buffalo start to diminish during the morning, and then things start to improve from that point on temporarily. Winds really ramp up as we get into the afternoon hours. In fact, again today, we're looking at some gusts 40 to 45 miles per hour out there as we work through this afternoon. So that combined with some snow falling at that time, it's going to make for some rough conditions. As we get you into Friday, a widespread system heads our way. Snow breaks out with that getting into Friday afternoon and Friday night. Stays all snow up to the north, Buffalo Metro up to Lake Ontario, but maybe a bit more of a mix, at least for a while, Friday night. So that will cut down accumulations there. And then it tapers off to some snow showers and some patchy freezing drizzle early Saturday morning, maybe some sun later in the day. So for today, 32 hilltops, 38 near Lake Ontario, turning colder this afternoon. A brisk wind breaks in the clouds, but occasional snow showers putting down 1 to 3 inches in spots. Tonight, 18 Hills, 24 near the lakes. Cold, partly cloudy metro. Lake snow showers south and northeast, 2 inches or less out of that. That continues tomorrow morning and then winds down in the afternoon. So partial sun, 25 to 31. As we get into Friday, that widespread snow arrives in the afternoon and continues overnight, winds down Saturday, and then after that, a better weekend.
Well, he got cut off. All right. So we got some awesome looking weather coming our way for
Hey,
the
Allie, Scott, yeah, we're tracking the snow across Ontario.
Now
That's
it's
heading
just
our way,
talking
and that's going to be
and-
dropping.
I didn't want it to. It's so annoying. All right. So we got some interesting weather coming in. Those
There's not much to show you because it's really.
I give up. I really am gonna give up.
Out there, but this really tells the story. We had people coming in the studio and telling us how bad it is outside the studio here in North Buffalo right now.
Off. So much for me finding it later when I need to do it for another class. All right, let's try this one more time. We got some pretty good weather coming in for anyone who still has Holiday Valley ski passes. They're the only ski resort still open. They're actually making snow today and tomorrow. Everybody else closed, but we got winter back. So maybe you can go to Holiday Valley and enjoy it. Or those of you who pay for Kissing Bridge like me, you are out a bunch of money this ski season. But anyway, we're gonna be talking about air masses. Mike Syka there was just talking about some weather stuff. What were some weather words he used in there? Don't make me play it again, because we know that ain't gonna happen. I can't, I give up. If I try to, it won't work. Nope, not going to. What was some of the weather specific words he used in his report? He definitely talked about a forecast. What else? Breezy. I heard a mention of cold front. Cold front's coming through later today. Just so happens that's what we're going to start learning about today. So let's get started. We're going to talk about an air mass. What do you hear or think of when you hear air mass? Literally a bunch of air, right? Like to me, an air mass or a mass is like a hunk of something, a large portion. So an air mass is, this goes right on the top of page 38, a large region of the atmosphere with uniform temperature and humidity. So it's a large region of the atmosphere with uniform temperature and humidity. By the way, what do I mean when I say uniform? Yeah, the same. So like just when you wear a uniform, the whole team looks the same. An air mass is a hunk of air with the same-ish temperature and humidity. It doesn't all have to be exactly the same, but it's all got to be like within a certain range. So in other words, a whole hunk of cold air or warm air. Then humidity is talking about whether it's going to be dry or wet. So you can have warm and dry, warm and wet, cold and dry, cold and wet. And of course, they don't use, they use abbreviations for this, but it's not abbreviations that are just like C for cold, W for warm, because they have to be all fancy and whatnot. So if you could grab your reference table and then open it up to page 13, that's the reference table I'm showing on the board right now. So we already used part of page 13. It's where we've got the temperature converting back and forth and the pressure conversion. But at the very bottom middle, we've got this chunk that says air masses. And here are your choices for air masses. In fact, if you want to start filling these in on that chart on page 38, it tells you what our choices are for air masses. We have CA, CP, CT, MT, and MP. And they each stand for something. The C always stands for continental. The M always stands for maritime. An A stands for Arctic, P stands for polar, and T stands for tropical. So you guys can go right ahead and start filling in that chart. Right where it says, what does it say in that middle section? Written form. So what does a CP stand for? Yeah, that stands for continental polar. How about CT? Continental tropical. So if you're not seeing where this is coming from, it's right on that reference table on the bottom of page 13. So just go through and pull them off of here. So this part is nothing you have to memorize. What they mean is right in your reference table. What they stand for, I should say, is right in your reference table. But what's not in your reference table is the next part, which says type of weather. So depending on where the air mass is coming from, they will have different weather associated with them. Now, these abbreviations, they're telling you where the air mass comes from. So where it originated. So if it originated, the first one was CP, right? If it originates in a continental polar region, the air mass will bring with it weather from a continental polar region. What kind of weather do you think you can expect from something called continental polar? First, what made you think it's cold? The polar stands for P. No, P stands for polar. What about the continental part? What do you think the continental part is going to tell you about the weather versus the other option is maritime? First of all, what do you think continental is trying to tell you? It formed over a continent. How about the word maritime? That might be a new one for some of you at least. What? No, it doesn't stand for nighttime. It stands for the sea. So maritime is a nautical term, like marine. You can see the word marine in maritime. It has to do with water. So if it's a maritime, it means it formed over water. Continental means it formed over land. What do you think the difference in the weather will be if it formed over land or water? More humid if it forms over the water, more dry if it forms over the continent. So continental polar is the first one we have here. Continental, which means it formed over the land, will always stand for dry. And polar, you already said, is cold. So the type of weather you can expect from a continental polar air mass is cold and or dry and cold. I did keep them in that order because the C, continental, stands for dry, polar stands for cold. So I did keep them in the right order, dry and cold. Now the next one is continental tropical. Now we already said continental tells us what kind of weather? Dry. What do you think the tropical is telling us? Warm. Now, how many of you thought when you hear tropical, you think automatically tropical rainforest? Do you think of Hawaii when you hear tropical? I always, and a lot of people have always said they think of a tropical rainforest, which then makes you think wet. But remember, wet is with the maritime label. So tropical just stands for warm. So if it's a CT, that's dry for the sea, T is standing for warm. How about MP, which we've already established stands for maritime polar? What's the M telling us? Ocean. So it's wet weather. And polar tells us cold. How about MT, maritime tropical? Wet for the maritime, warm for the tropical. Now here's one that we haven't talked about yet, CA, so the continental Arctic. What do you think is the difference between polar and Arctic? Which one, what do you think they both mean, first of all? Yeah, they're both talking about cold weather. One's talking about very cold weather, and that's the Arctic. So continental Arctic is always going to be dry for the continental, and Arctic is very cold. So an air mass, like I said, brings with it that type of weather. So the weather that you're having outside the window depends on what type of air mass is sitting over your location at that moment. So at the moment, right this very second, which type of air mass do you think is sitting on top of us? You'd say polar. I'd have to agree because it's freakishly cold out there right now. And right this moment, do you think it's continental or maritime? This very moment. Are you being sarcastic with me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, this is not the time to be sarcastic because people might get confused. Maybe in a little bit. So why is it definitely not a maritime right this moment? Because it's dry right now. It's not snowing. It's not humid. It's not foggy. This very moment, it is a dry air sitting over us. Mike Syka gave us some information though, around 11 o'clock. He said a cold front's going to push in and it's going to start snowing. So what's going to change later on with the air mass when you're going home today, for example? Will it still be polar? Yeah, it's going to be snowing. It's still polar. But what is going to change when it's snowing? Yeah, it'll be a maritime air mass later on. Now, one thing you will have to know off the top of your head are these types of weather. Now, one thing I could suggest to help you, and I'd say why not? Actually, let's do it this way so that I can record it. In your reference table on page 13, I think I would add a little key that C stands for dry. M stands for wet. P stands for cold. T stands for warm. A equals very cold. The only reason I hesitate to have you do this is because you won't have that key on the Regents. Because remember, for the Regents exam, you get a brand spanking new reference table. But one thing that you can do the second you walk into the Regents is add any labels you want to the reference table. So one thing we're going to do later when we start reviewing is reviewing our labels that we have on the reference table to help us. So for now, I think this key is a good idea, but just keep in mind you can't have it on the Regents. All right, the next thing that you do have to understand with these air masses is realize that these air masses move. In fact, we know that right now we have a CP outside. It's going to move away and we're going to get an MP later today. So the air masses are constantly moving. One thing you have to be able to do is label where those air masses may have started and show what kind of weather to expect for them. So here's what I mean. Let's take this example right here. First of all, hopefully you realize this is a map of the United States. Where are we on the map of the United States? Yeah. You should be able to generally point to where-ish we live. No, you're not going to get it down to the exact address near the lake. So hopefully you realize these are the Great Lakes here. These are the ones that are not close to us. So Michigan, Superior, and oh shoot, what's the other one? What is it? The other one. But we are close to Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. Niagara Falls is like right in the dead smack center of them. Buffalo is right around here, so that's close enough. So you do not have to know exactly where we are, but you should always be able to say, okay, Buffalo is over by these two lakes. So would you consider us generally a warm place or a cold place? We're a pretty cold place. Notice how they only have bubbles labeled a little more north of us and and south of us. They don't pick anything from the middle section here because air masses that start in the middle section, they're not going to be cold or warm. They're just going to be somewhere in between. So we always have places north of us and south of us. So let's start with this one, which happens to be in the dead smack center of Canada. So should a place that's in Canada get, first of all, it's right here in the middle of the country, should it get a C or an M? It's gonna get a C for the continental. And then should we give it a P, a T, or an A? A P for polar. Then what they're gonna ask you to do is say, okay, this air mass is gonna blow towards Buffalo. And then they're going to ask you what kind of weather you can expect. So if we have a CP, what kind of weather can you expect it to bring with it? It is going to be, yep, dry for the C, cold for the P. What about this one over here? MP. Why'd you give it an MP? Yeah, it's a maritime polar. It formed over the water and it's cold. And it's going to blow towards Buffalo. This, by the way, is what we call a nor'easter. It's coming from the northeast. We specify nor'easters because what kind of weather are they going to dump on us? What? Eggs and bunnies, absolutely. How about the M? It stands for? That's going to be wet. And what about the P? Cold. Cold and wet weather is always associated with a maritime polar. Those nor'easters drop off some disgusting weather on us. And because it's so close, it doesn't have very long to get rid of its wetness and coldness. So it is usually really yucky. This one over here, when it blows to Buffalo, what kind of weather can you expect? Another MP. Cold and wet, or I should say wet and cold. Those typically aren't as bad for us when they get to Buffalo because they have had some time to drop off a lot of their moisture. Unlike a nor'easter, by the time they get to Buffalo, they're still pretty full. How about this one? Way up here in what's either Alaska or the very northern part of Canada, it's hard to say. That is going to be your CA. And what kind of weather will it bring to Buffalo? Dry and very cold. Oh, all right, let's stop talking about this dreadful weather and let's say what happens if one comes from over here, which by the way, do you know what this area is called right here? This is the Gulf of Mexico. Do you technically have to memorize that? No, you do not, because it is not even labeled on the reference table. So they don't make you memorize any locations. So you don't technically have to know that, but I'd say you should probably know that. If weather's coming from the Gulf of Mexico, what can we expect? M what? MT, what kind of weather is that? That is wet and warm. How about this, which I think is technically Mexico, but maybe a little bit into Texas? What is it? CT. And a CT is going to be dry and warm. And over here, what do we got going on over here? Maritime tropical, so wet and warm. So those air masses bring with it weather, which is slightly different from a front. When else have you learned about fronts? What? When else have you learned about fronts? Not talking about science. Where else is there fronts in school? What? In history. War. I'm thinking I took a picture here from the internet of World War I with the good old trench warfare. What happens on a front in war? That's the battle. That's where people are dying. That is where one side is facing off against the other side. It is the ugliest part of the battle. The front is the war, which it's not exactly what I'm talking about, but the same is true. When a front passes through, that's the weather report for that day. When a front passes through, just like the front of a war, it is the boundary between the two sides. So right here at the top for page, what is it, 39? We've got the definition of a front. It's the boundary between two air masses. It's where one air mass is hitting the other air mass, just like a war. And just like in a war, this is where the messiest weather happens. When we have that cold air hitting that warm air, messy things are going to happen. So a front, like right now, we do not have a front over us. We just still have calm, decent weather that's behind or in front of, technically today, a front. So we're just right now kind of, if you're talking about war, we're back where maybe the medics are, maybe the camp is. We're still in a war, but we're in the back, not where the ugliness is happening. There are 4 types of fronts. They're also listed right there in your reference table. You don't have to memorize anything about these fronts. They are labeled. So if you ever see a line with triangles, that's representing a cold front. A line with half circles, that's a warm front. Stationary is triangles on one side, circles on the other, and an occluded front is a mixture of the two. You don't have to memorize any of that. It's right there in your reference table. And tomorrow we'll learn what happens when a warm front or a cold front passes through. You have no homework tonight. Shovel the driveway for your parents. Yes,